Hello. For the Martingale Excel, that's two options. You can use percentage, you can use pips. So for the Martingale TP, you can use percentage, you can use pips. So now how do this work? For example, if you have the first position here, then you have the second position here. So now, at what price does these two positions have a net profit of 0? Then continue to make positive profit. So let's assume at this point, this is when they both have net profit. So now starting from here down to wherever you want, which is, let's say you have Martingale TP set to 1 pips. So starting from here up to 1 pips. So that will be the Martingale TP. So now starting from here, which is the average price, down to Martingale XL, that will be the stop loss, the Martingale XL. So in the case where you specify 0, that means you don't want at stop loss to be used for the Martingale positions. But if you specify, let's say you specify 100, so 100 pips from the average, that will be the Martingale XL. And let's say you specify 1 pips, so 1 pips from the average, above the average in the case of buy and below the average in the case of sell, that will be the Martingale TP. So in the case where you are using percentage, that means this particular price level, then this percentage upward or downward. So let's assume I specify 1%. So that means the average price, let's say this is the average price, 1% above the average price, that will be the TP. So let's assume I specify 50, let's say 10% for the TP, and it should be in Excel. So that will be 10% below the average price of the positions. So that'll be the Excel. So now for the grid size, this is the gap between the positions. So in the case where you have, let's say you have 10 pips, so that means the distance between these positions will be 10 pips. Then in the case where you have percentage, that means how many percent relative to the last position. So in the case where you have percentage, that's 10 pips, 10, that means 10% downward, then 10% downward. So in the increments, so you have multiplier or you have addition. So in the case where you have the multiplier, that means you, let's say you have specified 2, by default it is 1. That's when you want uniform distance between your grid. So now in the case where you want the grid to increase by 2, you want to multiply the grid size by 2. So let's say this is the gap between the first position. So let's say this is the gap between the first position. So the next position will be this gap multiply, let's say this is the, then multiply by 2, then the next position will be this multiply by 2, and so on. So that is in the case where you put 3, that will be multiplied by 3. So the first position, the distance between the first position and second position, multiplied by 2, that will give the distance between the second position and third position, and so on. So in the case where you are using the addition, so that means you want to add a particular number of pips between to increment the size. So you don't want consistent or uniform gap between your grid size. So let's say you specify 10 and the first gap is 10. So now let's say 10 pips. So the first gap is 10 pips. So the next gap will be 20 pips. The next gap will be 30 pips. The next gap will be 40 pips. So that is for addition. So in the case of lot increment, so that means you want to increment your lot size next position. So what multiplier do you want to use? So let's assume you want to use multiplier. So that means first position multiplier by this value, that will give you the volume of the next position, and the next will be multiplied by 2 as well. So in the case where you want to add, so that means, let's say you want to add by 0.01. So that means the first position, then you add this value, then you add the next value for the next position, and so on. So this is the maximum lot size at which once the maximum lot size is reached, so instead of adding this lot increment, it will have a consistent lot size all through when this maximum lot size is reached. So in the case where you want to trail, so you have the option of trailing by pips, which is the conventional way. So if it is 0, that means you disable the trailing. So now if you want to activate that, you have to specify the value, right? It's in pips, so you specify the value. Then since you're in pips, so it will move, it will trail the stop loss starting from 100 pips. So it can also operate in form of percentage. So if you're the type of trader that operates with percentage, so you can easily activate this, and automatically this value will be considered as percent. So automatically this value will be considered as percentage. So now in case where you don't want to use martingale, you want to use edging. So this will be the gap between the positions, right? So and for the lot increment, so that will be the multiplier. You can use the lot increment in form of multiplier, and you can use in form of header, just like the martingale case. So now this is the break-even price in the account currency, not exactly dollar. So the account currency, once this price is reached, it will close the positions, and this is the maximum lot size at which is stop opening edge. So in the case where this whole panel is disturbing you, you can easily turn it off, and you can easily turn it back on. So that is the tool. See you on the next one.